are not enemies, they are companions. Think of music. A melody without tension is flat, lifeless. It is the interplay of harmony and dissonance, rise and fall, that makes it beautiful. Life works in the same way. Without sorrow, joy would lose its depth. Without chaos, order would lose its meaning. Awakening teaches you not to cling to one side while rejecting the other. It invites you to embrace the dance of opposites, to see that both are necessary for the fullness of existence. This is not easy. When grief grips you, the mind still cries out for relief. When anger surges, it still seeks an outlet. When fear arises, it still tempts you to shrink back. The difference is that now you no longer treat these emotions as mistakes. You recognize them as part of the flow. You allow them to move through you without identifying with them. You feel the storm, but you do not become the storm. In this way, awakening transforms suffering into a kind of teacher. Grief carves space for compassion. Fear sharpens awareness. Anger reveals where boundaries are needed. Each emotion, when welcomed instead of resisted, becomes a doorway to deeper wisdom. You stop asking, how can I get rid of this? And begin asking, what is this showing me? And in that shift, even pain becomes meaningful. Another dilemma of awakening lies in balance. As your awareness expands, you may feel pulled in two directions. On one side, the depth of stillness calls you inward. Meditation, silence, solitude. These feel nourishing, like water to a thirsty soul. On the other side, the world continues to demand action, work, relationships, responsibilities. The challenge is to integrate these poles, not to abandon one for the other. Awakening is not about retreating from the world. It is about bringing presence into the world. This balance is delicate. Spend too much time in inward absorption, and you risk disconnecting from life. Spend too much time in outward busyness, and you lose the depth of awareness. The awakened path is a rhythm of expansion and contraction, like the breath itself. Inhale, drawing into stillness. Exhale, expressing in action. Both are necessary. Both are sacred. Chaos and order also reveal themselves differently once you awaken. In the past, chaos was something to fear, to control, to eliminate. Order was the prize state, the sign of security and success. But awakening shows you that both are essential. Chaos brings creativity, novelty, transformation. Order brings structure, clarity, stability. One without the other is incomplete. Just as a forest needs both growth and fire, just as a river needs both flow and banks, life needs both chaos and order to thrive. You begin to see this play out in your own experiences. Times of upheaval, once dreaded, become opportunities for renewal. Times of stability, once taken for granted, become grounds for gratitude. You no longer fight so hard to force life into a single shape. Instead, you ride the rhythm, trusting that both calm and storm have their place. Awakening also changes how you view control. You see that the need to control was rooted in fear, the fear that life might betray you if left unattended. But now you realize that life has always been moving toward balance, even through apparent imbalance. The tree that falls in the forest becomes nourishment for new growth. The relationship that ends opens space for deeper love. The failure that wounds teaches resilience. Control was never the guarantee of safety you imagined. Trust, paradoxically, provides greater stability than grasping ever did. This realization brings a quiet courage. You find yourself less afraid of uncertainty, less shaken by loss, less desperate for guarantees. You still feel pain, but beneath it runs a current of trust. You sense that even this belongs, even this has meaning, even this will pass and transform. And with that trust comes freedom, the freedom to live without constant fear, the freedom to open your heart without demanding protection, the freedom to step into the unknown with curiosity instead of dread. Of course, this freedom does not make you untouchable. You still cry, you still bleed, you still ache. But now you recognize that vulnerability is not weakness, it is the very condition that makes love possible, that makes growth inevitable, that makes life alive. To awaken is not to escape the human condition. It is to embrace it so fully that even its sorrows shine, and so you begin to live differently. You no longer chase only joy while running from sorrow. You no longer cling to order while fearing chaos. You welcome both, not because they are comfortable, but because they are real. And in that embrace, you discover a deeper peace, the peace not of avoidance, but of participation, the peace of being fully alive. Awakening changes the way you relate to others, often in ways you could never have predicted. For some, your presence becomes a sanctuary. They feel calmer around you, more grounded, as if your steadiness grants them permission to breathe. They may not even know why, they simply sense something different in you, something they cannot quite name. Perhaps it is your lack of urgency, your refusal to be swept into panic, your quiet trust in life's unfolding. To them, you are like a still pond, reflecting their own restless ripples back to them in a softer form. But not everyone responds with comfort. For others, your awakening acts like a mirror they are not ready to face. They may grow defensive, even hostile. They may accuse you of being unrealistic, detached, or arrogant. Your refusal to play by the old rules threatens their sense of security. You no longer participate in the dramas of comparison, competition, or blame, and this absence unsettles them. In their eyes, you have changed. And you have. But the change is not that you care less, it is that you care differently. This shift can feel lonely. Relationships you once leaned on may begin to fade. Conversations that once felt satisfying now seem shallow, unable to touch the depths you are discovering. You may feel as though you are drifting from the world you once knew. But within that loneliness lies a paradox. Though you feel separate from many, you also feel more connected to life as a whole. The trees, the rivers, the sky, the very air, you sense intimacy with them that human words cannot contain. Where society falters, nature embraces you. Still, the heart longs for connection with others. Awakening does not erase that longing, it simply transforms it. Instead of seeking validation, you seek resonance. Instead of needing approval, you desire authenticity. You discover that true connection is not built on performance or agreement, but on presence. Two awakened souls need not share the same beliefs or lifestyles. Their bond flows from honesty, from being fully themselves in each other's company. This reorientation reshapes community. You may no longer fit neatly into the circles that once defined you, family roles, professional hierarchies, social groups. Yet new connections arise, often unexpectedly. A chance meeting blooms into friendship. A passing conversation awakens a sense of recognition. These bonds feel different from the ones built on convenience or obligation. They feel alive, as if guided by something beyond your control. And yet, the challenge remains: how to live in a society that often resists awakening. The modern world thrives on speed, consumption, distraction. It rewards performance, praises busyness, and worships certainty. To stand against that current can feel isolating. You may be misunderstood, criticized, even dismissed. But awakening calls you not to withdraw in bitterness, but to live as a quiet example. Your life itself becomes a teaching not through sermons, but through presence. This presence has ripple effects. A single act of authenticity can inspire others. A moment of calm can soften a storm. A simple smile, offered without agenda, can awaken something dormant in another. You may never know the impact of your presence, but it unfolds nonetheless, like seeds carried on the wind. Awakening is not about convincing the world. It is about embodying truth so fully that it cannot help but radiate outward. In this way, belonging takes on a new meaning. Once, belonging meant fitting into groups, conforming to roles, being accepted by the majority. Now, belonging feels more universal. You belong not because others validate you, but because you see that you are inseparable from existence itself. The forest does not need your approval to include you. The river does not ask you to earn your place. The stars do not question your worth. You belong simply because you are here, alive, part of the great unfolding. This realization does not erase the ache of loneliness, but it transforms it. Loneliness becomes less of a wound and more of a reminder of your longing for truth, for resonance, for depth. And when you honor that longing, you find that it guides you toward those who are walking a similar path. The resonance may be rare, but when it comes, it feels undeniable. It feels like home. So awakening reshapes relationships. It strips away the false and deepens the real. It dissolves the shallow and amplifies the authentic. It may leave you feeling out of place in the world you once knew, but it also opens you to a belonging so vast that no rejection can erase it. You realize that connection is not something you must earn. It is the very fabric of existence, waiting for you to notice. As awakening matures, life itself begins to take on the quality of myth. What once felt like a series of unrelated events now reveals itself as a story with characters, trials, lessons, and turning points. You begin to sense that the struggles you endure are not random punishments, but initiations. The blessings you receive are not accidents, but gifts. The people who cross your path, whether friend or foe, are not merely chance encounters, but teachers in disguise. This mythological dimension does not require you to believe in fantasy or abandon logic. It emerges naturally when you pay attention. You wake from a dream and realize it carries a message that echoes into your waking life. You face a challenge and recognize it as part of a larger pattern, pushing you toward growth. You look back on your past and see that what once seemed meaningless now fits perfectly into a greater arc. Life begins to feel less like chaos and more like a living tale, unfolding chapter by chapter. Dreams often play a central role in this unfolding. No longer dismissed as random fragments of the unconscious, they arrive with a weight that cannot be ignored. Symbols linger, images repeat, emotions press into your waking awareness. A dream of a door might return again and again until you realize it is calling you to step through something in your life. A dream of loss may reveal the attachments you are being asked to release. A dream of flight may awaken the freedom that has always been waiting within you. The boundary between waking and dreaming thins until both weave together into one continuous story. At first, this blending can be unsettling. You wonder if you are imagining connections, if you are projecting meaning where none exists. But with time, you notice how consistently these messages align, how precisely they mirror your inner landscape. You begin to trust that life communicates in symbols as much as in words, in patterns as much as in logic. The world itself becomes a dream you are living, full of clues and invitations. This sense of myth transforms how you face challenges. Where once you asked, "Why is this happening to me?" you now ask, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance, you see yourself as a traveler on a path, tested and shaped by each trial. The obstacle that once felt like cruelty now reveals itself as a necessary part of the journey. Without it, you would not grow. Without it, the story would not unfold. Even ordinary moments take on a mythological glow. Washing dishes becomes a ritual of presence. Walking down the street feels like participating in a pilgrimage. Sitting in silence becomes a communion with the mystery of existence. Life no longer divides neatly into sacred and mundane. All of it is sacred. All of it belongs. This shift does not remove struggle. On the contrary, it often heightens your awareness of it. You still feel loss, grief, and uncertainty, but you no longer see them as meaningless. You see them as threads in the tapestry, chapters in the story, necessary contrasts that give depth to joy and beauty. Awakening does not make life easier. It makes life meaningful. Society may not support this way of seeing. The world often insists that meaning lies in material success, in measurable outcomes, in status and recognition. To view your life as a myth, to treat each moment as part of a sacred story, may seem strange to others. They may dismiss it as impractical or naive. Yet the truth of it resonates so deeply within you that no external dismissal can erase it. You know, in your bones, that life is more than survival. It has always been more. This mythological awareness brings a new kind of courage. When you face difficulty, you no longer see it as evidence of failure, but as a test of character. When you receive blessings, you no longer cling to them in fear of losing them, but accept them as gifts meant to nourish you on the path. You begin to live less in fear and more in trust, less in control and more in flow. The story you are living is not written by someone else. It is not predetermined. It is co-created, shaped by your choices, colored by your awareness, guided by forces both within and beyond you. Awakening is the recognition that you are both author and character, both dreamer and dream. You participate fully, yet you also surrender to the larger unfolding. This paradox does not need to be solved. It is the mystery you are meant to inhabit. And when you embrace this mystery, life ceases to feel like a series of disconnected moments. It becomes a sacred narrative, a myth alive in real time. And you small, fleeting ordinary, you realize that you are part of something vast, timeless, extraordinary. There comes a moment in every awakening when the path narrows, when the comfort of gentle insights gives way to something more demanding. It is the point where you can no longer simply admire the light, you must walk through the fire. This is the turning point, the place where awakening shifts from inspiration to transformation. And it almost always arrives through suffering. Suffering, in this stage, is not a punishment, it is a stripping away. The identity you have built, the roles, the masks, the stories begins to dissolve. At first, this feels like death. You wonder who you are if you are not the successful professional, the perfect parent, the loyal friend, the one who always has answers. The image you once defended so fiercely no longer holds. And in its collapse, a terrifying emptiness opens. This emptiness is the threshold. It is the dark night of the soul, the place where certainty dies and the old self crumbles. Many resist here. They cling harder to familiar roles, desperate to hold on to something solid. But the more you cling, the more painful the dissolution becomes. Awakening demands surrender. It asks you to let go, to allow the old identity to fall away, even when you do not yet know what will replace it. The mind protests. If I let go, I will be nothing. And in a sense, it is right. You will be nothing, at least nothing in the way you used to define yourself. But this nothing is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. It is the fertile ground from which a truer self can emerge. It is the silence before the song, the stillness before the dawn. In this darkness, paradox becomes your only guide. You feel lost, yet you sense you are being led. You feel small, yet you glimpse your vastness. You feel broken, yet you suspect you are being remade. The mind cannot reconcile these contradictions, but the heart recognizes their truth. This is the crucible of awakening, holding opposites without collapsing into despair. Suffering here has a peculiar quality. It is sharp, but it is also cleansing. Old fears rise to the surface, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of death, and instead of burying them, you meet them, you look them in the eye. And as you do, you discover that fear is not a wall, but a doorway. Beyond each fear lies freedom. Beyond each pain lies space. Beyond each loss lies renewal. This stage often feels solitary. Others may not understand the depth of what you are going through. They may urge you to snap out of it or return to normal. But there is no going back. The shell has cracked, and no amount of pretending can make it whole again. You must pass through the fire. And though it feels lonely, you are not truly alone. Countless others have walked this path before, and countless others walk it now. The very fabric of life itself supports you, even when you cannot feel it. The dissolution of identity is not the end. It is the beginning of authenticity. When the false self falls away, what remains is not emptiness, but essence. You begin to glimpse a self not built on performance or approval, but on presence. You are no longer defined by what you do, what you own, or what others think of you. You are defined by nothing, and in that nothing, you discover freedom. This turning point also shifts your relationship with control. In the old way of living, control was your anchor. You planned, predicted, strategized, all in the hope of securing safety. But awakening reveals that control was always an illusion. Life moves with its own rhythm beyond your grasp. The more you tried to dominate it, the more you suffered. And now, in the fire of transformation, you see that surrender is not defeat, it is alignment. The river does not need you to push it forward. It only needs you to flow with it. Emerging from this crucible, you find a new kind of strength. Not the brittle strength of armor, but the flexible strength of openness. You are less afraid of pain, less desperate for certainty, less dependent on approval. You move with a quiet resilience, rooted not in who you think you are, but in the living presence that flows through you. This strength is not loud, but it is unshakable. The turning point of awakening is not easy. It demands that you die to who you were so that you can be born into who you truly are. It demands trust in the midst of uncertainty, surrender in the face of fear, courage in the presence of loss. But it is here, in this crucible, that the deepest transformation occurs. And once you pass through, you realize that what died was never truly you. What remains is what has always been vast, free, alive. There comes a moment in the journey when awakening no longer feels like gentle insight. It feels like collapse. The ground beneath you gives way, the stories you told yourself crumble, and the self you once defended begins to dissolve like smoke in the wind. At first, the emptiness is unbearable. You feel stripped, naked, unanchored. The familiar masks your name, your history, your achievements offer no shelter. The voice in your head cries out, "If I am not these things, then I am nothing." And for a terrifying moment, you believe it. You stand at the edge of an abyss, staring into the void where your identity used to be. This is the dark night of the soul. It is not poetic when you are inside it. It is raw. You may feel grief, as though someone has died. You may feel panic, as though you are unraveling. And in a sense, both are true. The old self is dying, and the unraveling is real. What you cannot yet see is that this death is not destruction, but release. In that abyss, something begins to shift. The silence deepens, the panic slows. And then, in a flash, the shock arrives. You realize you are not falling into the universe. You are the universe falling into itself. You are not a separate fragment lost in the cosmos. You are the cosmos, aware of itself through your eyes, your breath, your being. This realization hits with the force of thunder, yet it arrives without sound. One moment you are clinging to the idea of a small self, fragile and temporary. The next, you see that you were never that self at all. You were always the whole, playing at being the part. The abyss you feared turns out to be your own vastness. Tears rise, laughter bursts, sometimes both at once. You laugh because of the absurdity, how desperately you clung to an illusion, how seriously you took the game. You laugh at the futility of the chase, the heaviness of the masks, the endless grasping. And as you laugh, the weight falls away. The burden you carried for a lifetime was never real. The chains dissolve into air. The world itself transforms. The trees are no longer scenery, they are extensions of your breath. The sky is no longer distant, it expands inside you. The people around you are no longer strangers, they are faces of the same life wearing different masks. The separation collapses. The boundaries melt. All that remains is flow, unity, participation. This is not an escape. It is not a mystical flight into another realm. It is the most ordinary moment, seen with eyes unclouded. The miracle was never hidden. It was always in the rustle of leaves, the sound of water, the warmth of touch. The only difference is that now you finally see it, and in seeing it, you feel the deepest rest of your life. Not the rest of sleep, but the rest of belonging. You no longer need to strive for approval, to chase control, to prove your worth. You realize you are enough, not because you became greater, but because you always were. The play continues, but you no longer mistake yourself for just one character. You are the stage, the Actors, the story itself. This is the climax of awakening, the breaking open, the collapse of illusion, the laughter that frees. You do not rise above life, you fall into it completely. And in that falling, you discover you were never lost. You were always home. After the breaking open, after the laughter that stripped you bare, there comes a quietness unlike anything you have known. It is not the silence of absence, but the fullness of presence. Life looks the same. On the surface, your room is still your room. The streets are still the streets, but the way you inhabit them has changed completely. You no longer carry the burden of constant striving. The endless hunger that once gnawed at you has softened. You still act, still create, still love, but you no longer do so with desperation. Instead, you participate. Life is no longer a competition to be won. It is a dance to be joined. And this shift changes everything. Ordinary moments glow. You wake in the morning and notice the sunlight tracing gentle patterns on the wall. You hear the sound of birds and realize they have been singing all along, waiting for your ears to truly open. You walk through the city and see strangers not as obstacles, but as reflections of yourself, each carrying their own burdens, each alive with the same spark that moves through you. Even difficulties feel different. Pain still visits, but it no longer feels like an enemy. Instead, it feels like a teacher. Grief still cuts deep, but it no longer convinces you that something has gone wrong. Anger still rises, but it no longer controls you. These emotions move through you like weather storms that come and go, each clearing the air for new growth. You live them fully, but you do not mistake them for the whole of who you are. This clarity extends to relationships. You stop needing to perform, to impress, to bend yourself into shapes for approval. You speak more honestly. You listen more deeply. Some connections grow stronger, nourished by authenticity. Others fall away, no longer aligned with the person you have become. You grieve what leaves, but you also trust the unfolding. You realize that every relationship, whether brief or lifelong, carries its own purpose in the great story. A sense of belonging grows stronger. Before, belonging meant fitting into roles or groups. Now, belonging is more expansive. You belong not because others accept you, but because you are inseparable from existence itself. The trees, the rivers, the stars, all include you effortlessly. You no longer need to earn your place. You are already part of the whole, and in that recognition, a profound peace arises. Time itself softens. You no longer rush toward tomorrow or cling desperately to yesterday. You live here, now, in the only place life has ever happened. The present moment, once overlooked, expands into vastness. The taste of food, the sound of laughter, the breath moving in and out, these become treasures. The richness of now is enough. And from this richness, freedom emerges. Not the freedom of having no responsibilities, but the freedom of living without chains. You are no longer enslaved by fear of failure, no longer driven by the need to prove yourself, no longer caught in the trap of endless grasping. You are free because you have stopped resisting what is. Life flows, and you flow with it. This does not mean you retreat from the world. On the contrary, you engage more deeply. You care for others not out of obligation, but out of love. You act not because you must achieve, but because creation itself is joy. Your presence becomes a quiet offering, a ripple that touches others even without words. Some will be drawn to it, others may resist it, but you no longer need to control their response. You live authentically, and that is enough. The mythological quality of life remains. You still see your challenges as initiations, your blessings as gifts, your encounters as meaningful, but you hold them lightly, knowing the story is not about reaching an ending. It is about living each chapter fully, participating in the unfolding with open eyes and open heart. And perhaps the most beautiful realization of all is this: you no longer feel like a stranger in the universe. You feel at home. The chaos of the city, the silence of the forest, the joy of laughter, the ache of tears, all belong to the same great dance. You are not outspoken.
You What's going on? Enjoy. Alright.
Trying to control it. You are inside it, moving with it, as natural as a wave belongs to the ocean. This is the resolution of awakening, not escape, not perfection, but participation. Not the end of struggle, but the end of resistance. You live, you breathe, you love, you laugh. And through it all, you rest in the simple truth. You are exactly where you are meant to be. So here you are. You have walked through the paradoxes, felt the fire of dissolution, laughed at the absurdity, and discovered the quiet freedom of belonging. Awakening is not a distant peak. It is not the prize at the end of a race. It is the simple recognition that life as it is has always been enough. You do not need to fix yourself to be worthy. You do not need to chase tomorrow to find meaning. You do not need to hold the world in your hands to feel safe. The river has always carried you. The ocean has always included you. The story has always been yours. And now you see it. What comes next is not perfection. What comes next is participation. To live with open eyes, to listen deeply, to laugh when the game feels heavy, to rest when the world insists on rushing, to remember again and again that you are not a fragment lost in the cosmos. You are the cosmos, aware of itself in human form. And maybe, just maybe, as you live this way, your presence will become a quiet invitation for others. Not by preaching, not by convincing, but simply by being. Your authenticity will ripple outward. Your laughter will remind others of their own. Your calm will soften storms you may never even see. This is how awakening spreads, not as doctrine, but as resonance. If these words touched something in you, if you recognized even a fragment of your own story here, know that you are not alone. Many walk this path, many stumble, many rise, many laugh through tears. And together, we are all part of this vast unfolding. So let this not be the end of your listening. Let it be a doorway. If you wish to keep exploring, to keep remembering, to keep walking this strange and beautiful path of awakening, then stay with us. Subscribe so that each time we share, you can return to this space of reflection. Leave a comment, not for approval, but as a way of adding your voice to the conversation of life itself. And if this spoke to you, share it with someone who may be waiting for a reminder that they too are part of the dance. Because in the end, the wisdom is not mine, and it is not yours. It belongs to life itself, echoing through every moment, every breath, every encounter. All we do here is pause long enough to listen. And in that listening, we remember, there is nothing to chase, nothing to prove, nothing to become. There is only this life, unfolding, complete. So let us meet again, not to solve the mystery, but to live it. Not to reach the final note, but to dance with the music as it plays. Subscribe, share, comment, let your presence ripple outward. And together, let us rest in the truth that was here all along. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a miracle to be lived. We spend so much of our lives pushing, pulling, striving, trying to make things happen, as though the whole universe were a stubborn door that refuses to open unless we lean our entire weight against it. And yet, have you noticed? Most doors open inward. If you push too hard, you only jam them tighter. We are taught, almost from the moment we can walk, that life is a kind of contest, that you must exert yourself, apply effort, drive your will into the world. And so, we grow up clenching our minds, tightening our muscles, worrying ourselves into motion. We push our way through time. We force ourselves to succeed, to understand, to love, to be spiritual, even to relax. We make relaxation into another form of strain. But life, you see, doesn't work that way. Life isn't a machine to be forced. It's more like a melody, and you can't rush a melody without spoiling its song. Now, I don't mean you should sit about and do nothing. I don't mean you should let life slide by in laziness. But there's a very subtle art to letting things happen, to doing without forcing. The Taoists of China had a lovely word for it: Wu Wei, effortless action, action without strain. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Action without doing. But the meaning is quite simple once you feel it. It means moving in accord with the rhythm of things, like a surfer who rides the wave instead of trying to push it. He doesn't create the wave, he doesn't command it, he simply aligns himself with it. And so he moves effortlessly, beautifully, because he trusts its power. You see, the moment you begin to force life, you separate yourself from it. You create this division between me and what I want. And that tension makes everything harder. It's like trying to swim while holding your breath. You can't possibly float that way. Stop for a moment. Notice your own body. Right now, there's breathing happening without any effort from you. Your heart is beating, your blood moving, your thoughts rising and falling like waves on the sea. And you who think you are in control had nothing to do with any of it. You can't will your heart to beat faster for very long. You can't consciously digest your breakfast. Life does all of this for you, automatically. It lives you, in a sense, and if you try to interfere too much, you only disturb the natural flow. So, when I say don't force anything, I'm inviting you to trust this flow, to let life live itself through you, without so much interference from the little anxious voice that says, I must make it happen. Imagine a flower trying to bloom by effort. It would strain, tighten, shiver in the sunlight, and yet its petals would never open that way. The flower doesn't say, I must become beautiful. It simply grows, because growing is its nature. And so with you, you are not apart from the universe. You are the universe, expressing itself as this person, in this moment. When you fight the flow of life, you're like a wave trying to resist the ocean. But when you surrender, then the energy of the whole sea carries you. Now, that word surrender, it frightens people. They think it means giving up, but it doesn't mean that at all. It means giving in to what is real, to what's already happening. Let's take an example. Imagine you're trying to remember a name. You know it's there, on the tip of your tongue, but the more you try to drag it out, the further it slips away. You frown, you strain, you say, it's right there, I almost have it, and it doesn't come. But then, later, when you're washing the dishes, or walking outside, or doing something completely unrelated, suddenly the name pops right into your head. Why? Because you stopped forcing. You gave your mind a little room to breathe. And in that space, the answer came all by itself. That's how the whole of life works. The harder you clutch it, the less it responds. The tighter you try to hold water, the more it escapes through your fingers. And so, the art of living is not the art of controlling, but of allowing. To allow is not weakness, it's wisdom. There's a rhythm to things, a kind of breathing of the world. Expansion and contraction, growth and decay, rising and falling. Everything follows this movement. If you try to interrupt it, if you try to always be up, always expanding, always winning, you break the balance and the whole thing becomes painful. But if you can trust that the low tide will always return to high, that every night carries the dawn within it, then you begin to move differently. You stop fighting and you begin to dance. You see, not forcing doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become responsive, like a tree bending in the wind, rather than snapping beneath it. The tree doesn't resent the wind. It flows with it, and that's what makes it strong. Now, imagine for a moment that life is like music. You wouldn't sit through a symphony just to hear the last note, would you? You'd let yourself be carried by the sound, moment by moment. You wouldn't say to the orchestra, hurry up, get to the end, because the beauty lies in the unfolding. And yet, that's how most of us live, always trying to reach the conclusion, the answer, the success, always forcing the tempo. But the meaning of life, you see, isn't in the conclusion, it's in the playing. When you stop forcing, you begin to hear the music that was always there, the music of now. Stop and listen. You may hear the sound of your own breathing, the hum of the room, the quiet pulse of the world beneath it all. That's life, effortlessly being itself. It doesn't need your command. It doesn't need your push. When you force something, you imply that life is not enough as it is, that this moment must be different before it can be complete. But this moment right now is perfect in its unfolding, even in its imperfection, because what we call imperfection is just life still in motion. It hasn't finished its dance yet. Don't rush the dance. Don't force the rhythm. Think of a caterpillar forcing its way out of a cocoon before its wings are ready. It may tear itself apart trying to escape the process that is meant to strengthen it. The struggle of emergence is part of the becoming. But the timing, the when, is not the caterpillar's to decide. When you force yourself to bloom before your time, you suffer. When you resist blooming, when your time has come, you suffer again. So, don't force, don't resist, just trust the unfolding. It's quite funny, really. We go through life thinking we are the doer, when in truth, we are being done. You don't beat your heart, it beats you. You don't think thoughts, thoughts think themselves. You don't even breathe, breathing breathes you. And the more you realize this, the more you begin to laugh, because you see the cosmic joke of it all. You were never in control, and you never needed to be. You can work hard, yes, you can move, create, explore, but when you do it because it's delightful, not because you must. Work becomes play when it's no longer forced. Even discipline can be gentle when it's born from love rather than fear. A musician practices not because he's anxious to be perfect, but because he loves the sound. A gardener tends the soil not to command it, but to be part of its miracle. This is the kind of action that flows effortless, joyful, real. Stop for a moment and consider what happens in your life when you stop trying to make everything happen. What space opens when you let go of the steering wheel for just a breath? You find that things keep happening anyway, and often more beautifully than you could have planned. That's because forcing narrows the field of life. It blinds you to possibility. But when you release control, life reveals paths you didn't even know were there. You see, when a river meets a rock, it doesn't fight it, it flows around it. It still reaches the sea, just by another route. So when life seems to block your way, perhaps it isn't an obstacle at all, but a nudge, a redirection. If you force your way through the rock, you'll only hurt yourself. But if you let go, you find another way, one that's already waiting for you. It's not laziness, it's intelligence, the intelligence of water, the wisdom of yielding. And isn't that what peace really is? Not the absence of motion, but the absence of resistance. So, what happens when you truly stop forcing? Something remarkable. You begin to notice that life has its own intelligence, an intelligence far greater than the anxious plans of the mind. It's the same intelligence that turns an acorn into an oak, that guides the stars in their orbits, that shapes the tides and the winds. And that same intelligence is moving through you, this very moment. It doesn't need your attention to operate. It only asks for your cooperation. When you stop forcing, you don't lose direction, you gain alignment. You no longer act against the current, you move with it. And in that movement, your actions gain a quiet power. They stop being the jerky motions of fear and become the graceful gestures of trust. You see, the paradox is this: the less you try to control life, the more you find yourself in harmony with it. The more you relax into uncertainty, the more certain you feel, because you've discovered that you don't need to know what's next to be alive right now. Life is not a problem to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived. And mysteries reveal themselves only when you stop demanding answers. They bloom in silence, like night blooming flowers that open only when you stop shining your flashlight at them. Stop. Listen. Can you feel that quiet movement beneath thought? That gentle hum of being? That's you before you began trying to be someone. That's the effortless self, the one that doesn't need to prove or perform, the one that doesn't rush to fix or to force. It's been here all along, waiting patiently for you to stop struggling. We live in a world that glorifies effort, doesn't it? We are told that success belongs to those who grind the hardest, that peace comes from conquering the mind, that love must be earned, enlightenment achieved. But all of that is just more forcing, dressed in spiritual clothing. Real peace, real freedom, arises when you let go of the idea that you must attain them. Because the moment you chase peace, it runs. The moment you try to force stillness, the mind trembles. But when you stop chasing, when you simply notice what is, peace reveals itself. As quietly as dawn spilling through an open window. You can't make the sun rise by shouting at it. You can only watch in stillness, as it does inevitably, perfectly, on its own time. And that's how everything unfolds. Love, growth, clarity, purpose. They arise when the soil of your being is soft, when you're not pressing so hard for them to grow. Imagine you're trying to catch a soap bubble. If you snatch at it, it bursts. But if you open your hand gently, it may land right there, glimmering for a moment before floating away. That's how joy works, how love works, how truth works. You can only hold them by not holding at all. Now, many people fear that if they stop forcing, nothing will happen, that without pressure, they'll lose all direction, become lazy or indifferent. But this is misunderstanding the nature of life. You see, the universe abhors stillness only when it's dead, and you are not dead. You're brimming with life. There's a deep spontaneity in you that wants to move, to create, to dance. When you stop forcing, you don't fall into inertia, you fall into rhythm. That rhythm may be slow at times, fast at others, but it's never forced. It's alive. It's like jazz. The beauty of improvisation comes not from controlling every note, but from listening deeply to what wants to happen next. You are part of that great improvisation. The music of existence playing itself through you. And when you try to force the music, you create dissonance. But when you listen, truly listen, you find that the next note comes naturally. The melody unfolds of its own accord. Have you ever noticed that the most beautiful things in life tend to happen when you least expect them? A sudden laugh that lightens your day, a stranger's kindness, a moment of insight that just appears out of nowhere. These things can't be forced. They come as gifts. They come when you stop trying so hard to deserve them. Forcing is the language of fear. Allowing is the language of trust. And trust, real trust, is the essence of peace. Now, I don't mean blind trust, not the kind that ignores reality. I mean a deep trust that even the difficult moments are part of the unfolding. That even confusion, pain, and loss have their own rhythm, their own hidden intelligence. The seed doesn't curse the darkness of the soil. It trusts that the dark is where it must begin. So when life seems heavy, unclear, or still don't force your way out of it, don't demand that spring arrive before winter is done teaching. Because forcing growth before its season only weakens the roots. When the time is right, you'll feel the movement again. You'll feel it the way a bird feels, the change in wind, not by thinking, but by sensing. That's how life guides you when you stop forcing. Not through plans, but through feeling. Listen, right now, there is nothing missing. The universe, in its infinite play, has brought you here, to this moment, breathing, listening, alive. You didn't force your way into existence, did you? You simply appeared. And that miracle continues every second, effortlessly. All forcing is rooted in forgetfulness, forgetting that you are already part of the great design. The mind, when afraid, forgets its belonging and begins to shout commands at the ocean. But the ocean doesn't need to be told what to do. It's already dancing. Sometimes, to remember that truth, you must be still. Not still as in rigid, still as in receptive. Still as a mirror that reflects everything without holding anything. And in that stillness, you realize that nothing ever needed to be forced, because everything has been unfolding perfectly, even the moments that seemed imperfect. The rain that ruins the picnic also feeds the earth. The delay that frustrates you may save your life. The failure that breaks your heart may open it wide enough for real love to enter. There's a hidden grace in what you didn't plan, but you can't see it while you're forcing. You can only see it when you let go. Stop. Breathe. Look around. Everything is happening all by itself. The world turns. The air moves. The body breathes. And you are simply here. The miracle was never about making things happen. It was about noticing that they already are. When you stop forcing, you stop dividing yourself into the doer and the done. You become the happening itself. Life moves, and you move with it. Thought rises, feeling comes, sound, silence, laughter, tears, all of it dances through you like wind through the trees. And the funny thing is, when you live this way, not forcing, but allowing, you actually become more effective, not less, because your actions come from clarity, not compulsion. They arise naturally.